These poems were written after the fact that I had lost the ability to walk, that I'd spent a couple of years in recovery, doing a lot of internal processing, a lot of kind of my life falling apart and then putting it back together again. And also doing work then from that with people who suffered chronic medical conditions, doing creative writing with them. So some of these poems come out of doing that writing work with people and my own personal work. Creation myth. In the beginning was the loneliness, and the loneliness fashioned a God in her own image. And the God said, "Now I have power. Now I can erase the long abandonment from which I came." And then God made the heavens and the earth, and all the creatures and spirits who live in the higher and lower realms, and the innumerable multitude of stars which fill the night sky, and the galaxies they are contained within. And then God said, "We shall call this place Earth, and it'll be the place where all the realities merge, where all the thoughts I've been thinking will be rendered in trees and rocks and birds, and the splintering of ocean waves upon the cliffs, and the storms that swallow entire continents. And I'll fix my gaze upon this place, and the joys and sorrows of the creatures who dwell here will be as close to me as the blinking of my own eyes. And I'll fashion women and men in my own image, and I'll breathe on them as I have not breathed on any of my other beings, the lizards and the cockroaches, the myceliums and ferns, the angels and many messengers who inhabit all the celestial planes. On human beings alone I will endow my own art, that sad, adoring, mesmerizing space from which all the other mysteries are born. And they'll know the ecstasy of God and my overwhelming love for all things. And they'll know the intelligence of God and my grandeur and simplicity that masquerades in infinite and infinitesimal form. And they'll know the intensity of God, my passion and my heat, my desire to see all things merge and then torn out by their roots. And the loneliness of God. They will know that too. And then the moon scratched me on the arm with its white hand, and I took hold of the rope that hung from its luminescence and swung out over gardens and fields and lakes and hillsides and forests and the birds who were sleeping in them, over newlyweds and divorces and children in their animal pajamas and the grandpas who could no longer rise to lift them, and the horses in their barns and the girls who every afternoon forgot their loneliness to ride them, over townships and cities, and playgrounds and water fountains, and empty parking lots and churches, and places where the dead collect beneath the grass and stones. After the dream, I was still in bed when I was visited by foxes, and they rubbed against my arms with their silken tails until I too smelled like a creature of the foliage. And I knew from them my life was the one thing I could not have unless I did not try to hold it. But there I sat, like 100 miles of mountains aching to be crossed, and the compass I'd been given I'd not yet learned to read. But that in the crossing I'd learned to read it, and when I got to the river at the edge that becomes a mouth that feeds the whole countryside with the telling of its gradual descent, I'd know that I was always safe within my own story, and that the one thing I never trusted was the one thing that always knew the way. Did the twist on you. I opened with the sex poems and then I go all deep and shit on you. Got all epistemological. I like it too. How would you pronounce it? Epistemological. Epistemological. I once felt bad about mispronouncing words, but then 2 weeks ago at the Skagit Poetry Festival, which is a lovely, nationally recognized poetry festival, Mark Doty, who's a god of poetry. No, it wasn't Mark Doty, it was Robert Haas, even a bigger god of poetry, former poet laureate of the U.S., stopped his poem mid-poem to say, "How do you pronounce this word?" to the audience. It's lovely. It was a French word, so it wasn't English. Visiting hours. My internet is down, so I take the risk of a public display of productivity. This coffee shop is a good one, and Modest Mouse is singing "We'll All Float On Okay." Outside, March is falling for its own cliches. It rains. The spirit of the Pacific Northwest descends upon this place like a fog of doleful longing and passive aggressivity. I am stronger than these now. Try to get down to work, but hear the sound of a poem scuttling around in the ventilation. Recognize I have no other choice. 2. The other people in the room are a suitable place to start. The 3 fat gay men with 2 giant blue bottles of Listerine beside their coffee cups. I'll not try to explain what I don't understand. They talk about the same things they talked about last week. They must do this every Monday. They are so full of boredom and of love. An iMac man with his round professorial glasses typing away. He could be an engineer or a poet. Dusky blonde who pays no attention to me in her plaid rubber boots. I will not dare a second look. There are others. The room is full of them. Upon their sculpted faces, the earnest crease of life. I can smell it on them. It's stronger than the coffee beans and cubes of chocolate. It smells of fissured hearts and indignant losses, and specks of cinnamon and money showing up in the mail from a relative you are not aware of. And the drag of the body through the garden of stones you cannot remove, and the slow pull across the object of your breaking you return to every day. 3. And I'm in my own life again. I sit within it like a gray house with broken windows. Beneath the dust, the hardwood floors are cedar and over 100 years old. And now I can see clearly down the glass tubes of all my uncertainties and spot the insecurities spooling at the ends. And I'm happy here. The tenant of this place is an old man who can tell you precisely where he was at on the day wars began and ended. But he's already gotten up from his chair and is gone somewhere in the back lot where he belongs amongst the vegetables and birds. And I'm left only with the chimes on the front porch, reminding me that death is a wind that eventually finds its way through drainage pipes, under doors. And this life, I remember, is so many hours, cleaning up, breaking down, getting back up off your knees, rehearsing lines that may or may not be used, awaiting that hour of visitation, whoever it is that finally shows up, whenever it is he comes. You guys up for 2 more poems? Okay. Thank you. You guys are lovely. It's Zippy's, when I was under the tutelage of Garrett Rutledge, was actually my first feature way back in 2009. So you guys got a special place in my heart. It's a place that kind of got me going. Yeah, Dwayne, it's great to see you carrying it on and continue to build and grow it. So thank you for inviting me down. And I'll make a brief plug. I'm doing a writing retreat in 2 weeks up in Bellingham. And I've got flyers here. These are old flyers, so this is not the name of the retreat, and these aren't the workshop, and this is not the date, and the location isn't wrong. But if you want to, but the price is about the same. It's a sliding scale, 30 to 70. So, I want to accommodate poor-ass poets and you gainfully employed equally. If you're interested, I'll tell you more about the retreat. It's an experiential writing retreat. We're going to go out in nature a bit and write in the Seahome Arboretum. We're going to dig into Maria Rainier Rilke, who was a really wonderful German mystical poet of the 19th century. And we're going to play some music and kind of let music take us into a poetic space. If you're interested in that, talk to me. I'll get you the full details. We've got room for a few more. A story of ends. And what if at the very end, when the whole cosmos has become a vast, empty sea of listless photons, the universe hits the rewind button, plays itself in reverse. Exploded stars hold constitutional conferences, decide to reintegrate. Bits of dust gather to themselves, become planets. Galaxies reconstruct as merry-go-rounds. Someone gives a push. They spin. Here on Earth, we go back to the business of rising from the grave. Coffins pull themselves out of the ground. Family members lift them into hearses where they're carried back to funeral parlors, and toxic chemicals are pumped out of their bodies. Then they're driven to a hospital where a doctor pronounces them dead, and they return to life. Slowly, gentle, uneven, breathing first, then steady like a machine. All of a sudden, your eyes open. You say, "Uvuli." Tears unsoak themselves from your middle-aged daughter's dress, slither back up her cheeks into her eyes. A frail old man learns to walk again. His memories return. The scattershot of his mind returns to its casing, and he finds that he's full of heartbreaks, full of unfinished things he wished he could have done, full of beautiful, tender moments that bring him tears. He's now living these again. He and his wife unsign their divorce, decide to seal back all their disappointments with each other behind reluctant smiles, live in fragile peace. Now they're happy again. What they know of each other steadily diminishes to the point that they kiss. A rebellious college-age blonde moves into their house, unpierces her nose, becomes a teenager. Her breasts shrivel into her chest, and all her friends come over to celebrate with birthday cake and a puppy. Now he's young again. His strength again begins to diminish as he unlearns facts, unlearns friends and lovers and the miles he's run and the mountains climbed, unlearns his confidence in himself and all the things he believes he knows for sure. Becomes simple and small, a boy in his sandbox, unbuilding his castles, making roughed-up surfaces smooth. Becomes an infant, sucks feces up his anus, spits it out his mouth as food. All things around him become clean and whole. He returns to his mother's womb, to satiety and warmth. She in turn returns to her mother, and her mother to another womb, womb after womb, shrinking into embryos to the point where there are no more wombs. All life breaking from each other like splitting cucumbers. The first cells become stones. The stones remember nothing, only the urge to become hot, to become magma. The planet becomes fire, flies out of its orbit, returns to become a chunk of another broken star. The universe, collapsing on itself faster and faster, returns to naivety, returns to uncomplicated urge, to unmanifest desire, packs itself into a point of light, infinitely small, infinitely hot, infinitely bright, then too disappears into the dark, empty womb of the void. This weird fascination with ending the world and then starting it again and ending it. It's the one power we poets have, right? It's like playing Risk, It's like for 15 minutes I can conquer the globe.
You have to read that whole poem backwards.
I'll try. I'll work on that for the.
No, when it reminds.
Yeah. Okay, last one. So this is another kind of those poems. The Day I Die. I sometimes wondered if I'll die in prison, sometime after we elect our first fascist president, and writing about masturbation once again becomes a crime. Alone, in solitary confinement, with nothing to accompany me but my tuberculosis hack, merrily scrawling dirty limericks upon my cell walls until I breathe my last. But the truth is, I'll be released from prison, sometime after the conclusion of the Second Civil War. It'll be my 63rd birthday. The birds will be singing their April lullabies. The daisies will be crooning beneath the noonday sun. And I'll live another 16 years. It won't be the car wreck that kills my second wife and leaves my leg buzzing like an electric fence ever thereafter. And it won't be the nightshade berries my absent-minded great-grandson accidentally slipped into the Waldorf salad at the family reunion down in Lake Oswego. Lake Oswego. And it won't be the cancer that colonizes my prostate and eats away my spleen. No, it will be a sunny day in August. The night before there'll have been a storm, raindrops still dripping from the bejeweled trees. The birds will be hopping up and down as they excavate worms from the frothy soil, and rays of light coming at me through the branches like the yellow lines on the freeway. And I'll go to them through the forest, upon the trails of the deer, go until the light begins to feel warmer, till it feels like it's getting closer. As I drop my cane, as my mouth becomes too dry for words, and these eyes no longer have the moisture left for tears. And I'll go until they cannot find me, so they'll have to say either I disappeared down into the earth or up into the sky, and put a tombstone down someplace where the grass is fresh and green, and try to pretend it's heavy enough to hold down all of my memories, because unless some of my pieces are held in all your hearts, I'll be somewhere, anywhere, everywhere, but here. Thanks.